Welcome to Profiles with Jason Patterson. Our pleasure to have you with us as we reflect upon the remarkable career and extraordinary life of former South Carolina wide receiver and Hall of Fame Chapin head coach, Eddie Muldrow. Coach, thanks so much for taking time to visit with us.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me on this.
Let's start by talking about some of the basic values that have driven your life. As you look back across your journey and your career and your life as a whole, what would you say are the basic values that have kind of been there consistently all along as the driving forces for you?
I think from your background and your family, I think they taught us. I had two other sisters to try to work hard, uh, be fair to other people, and to give your best effort every day. And that was kind of some lifetime goals that our parents tried to install of us as children. And I think I tried to carry that into teaching and coaching and also my life.
Who were your heroes and influencers growing up, and just how have they impacted your life?
Well, my first hero was Mickey Mantle. I remember once in Cub Scouts, they asked you, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, I want to play center field for the New York Yankees. So Mickey Mantle was my first hero. And then I was given the number one in baseball in Pony League, so I became Bobby Richardson as my hero. So the Yankee baseball team were probably some of my favorite heroes in early age.
You had a chance to interact with some of those heroes and maybe have a certain grounder that sticks out for all of time in relation to those two.
We did. I was lucky enough to play American Legion baseball in Sumter, South Carolina. I grew up in Bishopville, and we didn't have a Legion team. And I still call him Coach Bobby Richardson. Brought Mickey Mantle and Tony Kubek to Riley Park in Sumter in 1969 while we were having a Legion game. And Mantle and Kubek both took batting practice from Coach Richardson, and Mantle hit a ground ball that somehow stuck in my glove. So I can say I caught a ground ball from Mickey Mantle. I wouldn't have thrown him out probably, but I caught the ground ball at shortstop anyway.
That's quite the memory. Well, and you've been a guy who has been respected and steady. Folks point to you as an individual who, throughout your life, having done things the right way. What are the consistent elements that you would point to out of your own approach that have sustained you well over the decades?
Well, there was a coach who said something once when I retired. I think they asked the next athletic director something about me, and he said, well, Coach Muldrow tries to do the right thing, not the easy thing. And I think in life, sometimes you can choose the easy way out, but you got to do what's right. And I think young people, if they know you're doing the right thing, they may not agree right then, but maybe when they grow up a little bit and they get past that 15 to 17 years old mentality, they understand that maybe you were trying to do it the right way.
Talk about some of the adversity you dealt with in college and how it helped you develop and grow as a person.
Well, Coach Dietzel, during my fifth year, I was a redshirt player. After we'd lost to Duke early in the year, I think it was the second game of the year in a tight game, came in the locker room and said, I'm resigning at the end of the season, and I hope to stay as the AD. Well, as 18 to 22-year-old players, you start looking around and say, oh, Lord, what's going to happen now? Some were bailing ship. Some were saying, I'm going to play for myself. But the seniors said, we got to stick together. Most of us, this will be our last playing days, and we want to try to make the best of it. So it made you kind of grow up in a hurry to see that, life is not full of roses on every day.
How much did experiences like that play into your later coaching approach in your own career?
Well, probably there were some years I thought about resigning. We went 0-10 one year, and I said, maybe I'm not the person for this job. Each year, I've always kept a record of how many kids came out as seventh graders as middle school and how many we still had left when they were seniors. And in that particular class, we only had 16 seventh graders come out for football, and 12 of them stayed and played as seniors. Most times we had 35, we got down to about 25. But it was a very small male class at Chapin that year. It made me think maybe somebody else should be doing this, but the principal stayed behind me, and I'm glad he did.
No doubt. So is the state of South Carolina. We'll talk about your Hall of Fame coaching career in a little more depth in just a bit. But finishing up on your time as a player, give us a memory or two, a story or two, and a little bit of a window into what your playing days were like at Carolina.
I was very fortunate. I was on a very good high school football team as a junior. And South Carolina, Clemson, and other schools were looking at our running back, who was the star of our team. And occasionally I got to carry the ball when he got tired. So I had a chance to maybe get my name out there a little bit, and gave me an opportunity to be recruited as a senior the next year. And so I was very fortunate. If I'd have been on a team that went 2-8, probably nobody would have come by our school. But Chuck Mims was that player that came to South Carolina, and I followed him to South Carolina. As a freshman, we had potentially 35 guys on scholarship, and we had 34, and we had 8 walk-ons. So it was like a large high school team, 42 players. And for the first 3 days of practice, I was a defensive back. When I was recruited, they said, and I felt like I was going to be probably a utility player. They said we might use a defensive back, receiver, or running back. And so I was a left cornerback for 3 days, and then a teammate who later became one of my best friends hurt his knee in shorts, and they moved me over to receiver. So from then on, I stayed as receiver. But on the freshman team, we ran some power eye sets. I was you'll laugh at this, I was a blocking back in the power eye. But about every 5th play, we ran a little weak side sweep, so I got to carry the ball to the weak side on a sweep. So you wouldn't think of me as a power back, blocking back in the eye, but that's what I was when we ran that formation. And so from there, I stayed at receiver the rest of my career at South Carolina, and I was fortunate enough to stay healthy and not have to miss a game because of injury.
You wore number 22 in high school. You would wear number 40 at Carolina. What have those two numbers, those two jersey numbers specifically meant to you in your life?
Well, 22 was very strange. In the 10th grade in high school, I was fortunate enough to make the varsity football team. And to be honest, I didn't want to, because I was the only 10th grader on the team. All my buddies were on the JV team in Bishopville. So they were handing out jerseys. The varsity coach handed me number 22, and he said, "Son, I want you to wear this proudly." I said, "Why, coach?" He said, "I wore number 22 in high school." I said, "Well, I'll try to." So he gave me something to try to look up to. I didn't want to let him down, because I guess he felt that was kind of a special number for him. And I wore that and wore that my freshman year at Carolina, and then I was switched to number 40. But back then, you weren't given choices. You were happy to get a jersey. So if they'd have given me 00, I'd have worn that.
As long as you're out on the field, right?
Right, just give me a chance anyway.
The garnet and black, I know, still holds a very special place in your heart. Describe your continued connection to Carolina and to the state of South Carolina, where you've invested your entire life, Coach.
My father joined the Gamecock Club in 1970 when I was a freshman at South Carolina. And when he passed away, we continued that, I guess, investment in the university's athletics. And we have season tickets. We go to the home games, and I've kept season tickets near the coaches section. So I get to see some of the current high school coaches, visit with them. A lot of the Chapin coaches I'll visit with at halftime, saying, "I saw y'all's game last night. You really performed well." Or if I'll see somebody else and I know that their team has had a big win, I'll try to talk to them about it. But I'm in a position where I can go to games. I don't have to worry about doing laundry on Saturday morning, injured players, getting scouting reports, game film, practice schedules ready for the next week. I can go down and watch the games and enjoy them as much as I can with the Gamecocks.
Well, your Hall of Fame coaching career featured 5 region championships. You coached in the North-South game. There are a lot of different accolades and accomplishments that could be discussed. But I wonder, from your point of view, what are the memories that stick out most from your 25 years, quarter century in coaching?
Sometimes it's games and sometimes it's individuals. I thought about this last night. In our second year at Chapin, now our first year, we'd only won 2 games. And I remember a judge in town said, "Coach, y'all did pretty," he said this at a basketball game. He said, "Coach, y'all had a pretty good year this year." I said, "Judge Frick, we only won 2 games. He said, "Better than Woolbright. He only won 1 last year." I said, "But I won't be around here long if we only win 2 a year." So we got through that first year, but we did something unusual. We kicked field goals and extra points. And Coach Cecil Woolbright, even though he was a great coach, won state championships, he never trusted a kicker in his life. So we did something that it was kind of new. And then the second year, probably the memory that was special We went to Woodruff the second round of the playoffs. Coach Varner was there, a legend, as everyone knows, in the state of South Carolina. And somehow we upset them. We put together a 2-minute drive of 72 yards in 42 seconds with no timeouts and scored on the last play of the game. And what made it special, I remember the official telling me, said, "Coach, if it's all right for you, we won't kick this extra point. We'll get out of here." I said, "I'm following you." But what made it special was a kid that scored the winning touchdown the year before as a junior had not been eligible because of not being able to pass a physical. He was declared legally blind in one eye, and he wanted to play, but our athletic trainer said, we can't do that. We can't risk his future life because of football. So his senior year, he got a doctor in Charleston, not in the Columbia area, to sign his physical papers. And he had to wear, I call it Kareem Abdul-Jabbar goggles, a special triple bar face mask that you couldn't even poke a pencil through. And he scored the winning touchdown against Woodruff. So it was a special moment where we tried to protect him as a junior for his future. And he ends up scoring the winning touchdown his senior year in a playoff game against Woodruff. So things like that, you say, well, maybe we made a mistake and not trying to go the extra mile, but the young man was determined to play, and he found a way. And we felt comfortable after going through all that to give him that opportunity.
Those are the life memories that stand out for sure. Another of those memorable moments for you, I kind of alluded to it, the North-South game. Talk about your experiences coaching in the North-South game and what an honor that was for you.
Well, it certainly was because, it's fun to say, well, we've got good players at every position. In high school, you say, whoops, if this guy gets hurt, we're in trouble. But here, you get to pick the best after the Shrine Bowl has made their selection. And it's quite an honor to see the best from each of the other teams that you've selected come together as a team in a short period of time, bond, and try to accomplish something in the game. We were blessed to have great assistant coaches. I know one person in particular, David Gutshaw from Dorman, was very unselfish. He said, "If you need me to coach defense, I'll do it." I said, "No, you're going to be on offense, and I'm going to be with you." And I said, if we get one of these two quarterbacks, we're going to run the Dorman offense. I said, if we don't, we're going to run Chapin's offense. Because at that time, we were an I formation team, and Dorman was a shotgun spread team. Well, fortunately, we got both of them. So I said, okay, the offense is yours. So we basically learned Dorman's offense, the three of us that were going to work on offense. And we ended up winning the game by 1 point. We made a 2-point play. We got down to the end. The neat thing about that story was South Carolina Automobile Association was a major sponsor for the game, and they were giving the winning coach a trip to their convention, which was going to be in the Bahamas, like later on in the spring. So it got down to the last seconds of the game. We were down by 1. And Coach Gutshaw looked at me and said, "What do you think? Want to kick the extra point?" I said, "We're coming here because we're coming to win." And the other team, the South team, called timeout. And I'll never forget, a coach from Louisville was a defensive line coach, came by me and said, "Coach, you got 1 foot on the boat." So we made the 2-point play, but it was a good experience for us.
You earned that opportunity with that quarter century of respected work in the coaching field. Talk a little bit about the fit at Chapin. Obviously, in the current landscape, you think about 25 years of investing your life in a location like that and making such a difference. What was it about the fit at Chapin that made it special, that made it right for you?
Well, it's kind of strange, though. When I was a senior in college, going out to student teach, I had 2 opportunities. I remember they said, you can go to Spring Valley or Chapin. And as a college senior, I said, Chapin is very similar to Bishopville, a little community I grew up in. I said, I want to try something at a larger school. So I did my student teaching at Spring Valley, not under Joe Tuberville, but he was in that PE department. And every day he would ask me questions about, what are y'all doing at spring practice? What are y'all doing in the weight room? So some of that developed from that. But I realized later, I said, smaller communities sometimes rally behind their athletic teams. And I said, if you can make a home there and have a little bit of success, a lot of times it's a good place to raise a family. And hopefully they don't expect you to win a state championship every year.
Well, it served you well. What was your philosophy of coaching? If you had to kind of break down your philosophy, both offensively, defensively, how would you describe the coaching style of Eddie Muldrow?
Well, we had a blend of a little bit of several people. I grew up in high school running the straight T formation with two tight ends. And believe it or not, I was a fullback in high school. So there we go. Fullback in high school, a wide receiver in college. Figured that out anyway. But I was the biggest back and our third biggest guy on our team at about 180 pounds. So we weren't a very big football team. So the T formation was what I grew up with. And then going to college, we were more of a split back veer with Jeff Grants and Ron Bass and other people running that. Then I went to Chapin High School as a JV coach under Cecil Wilbright. We were the full house T, very similar to what I did in high school as a player. And then I went and worked 3 years with Joe Tuberville, and we were an I formation team with multiple alignments, multiple sets, multiple motions. So I tried to take a little bit of everything except the split back veer. Somebody said, "Why didn't you do that?" I said, "Well, at Carolina, our quarterbacks were always hurt. They were always getting banged up because they had to be the third ball carrier to make it be effective offense." I said, "So I don't think you can do that in high school unless you've got two really good ones or either some tough running quarterbacks." So a lot of it I've kind of blended from and then Dave Gutshaw gave us just whatever we needed. I went and I would carry my film to him after our season. I said, "Dave, tell me what we should have done against Strom Thurmond because they beat us 21-7. He said, "Get better players." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You're doing what you should be, what they're trying to defend you, but they're just better than you." I said, "Okay." I didn't want him to say, "Well, you should be trying to run the ball more or pass it more. Y'all be doing screens here, that." He said, "They just got better players." So he was a valuable resource when we went to more of the shotgun spread in our last 5 years at Chapin. So probably a little bit of blend of everything. But personally, I stayed with the offense. I was a play caller. Other people could make suggestions while we were on defense or during timeouts, but I wanted to be focused on that, and I let our other defensive coaches do all the play calling on defense. All I wanted was to get the ball back anyway. So I didn't interfere with saying, "Okay, we need to be blitzing more. We need to be playing man coverage or 3 deep zone or cover 2 or whatever." I kind of try to, because when I worked for Coach Joe Tuberville at Irmo 3 years, his philosophy was let your assistant coaches coach. Don't try to coach every position. Now, some people are smart enough, they can coach every position. I wasn't. I coached receivers every year I coached, and that was it. I never coached the quarterbacks. I never coached the offensive line. I never coached. But in Shrine Bowl, I had to coach the defensive back. So I had to go to other people to get some help for that, like my defensive secondary coach at Chapin and some other people they said, "Hey, you can have good players, do whatever you want. Just get them on the field and they'll take care of it." And Zola Davis from Burke High School in Charleston was our safety. And I said, "Zola," I said, "what do you like to do?" He said, "One free." So I said, "So y'all played a lot of man-to-man with a free safety?" He said, "Yep. That way I could just read the quarterback and go wherever I want." I said, "Okay, that's going to be one of our base coverages." And another kid from Dillon on that Shrine Bowl, I said, "What did y'all do?" Everything was man-to-man. So I said, "Okay, we can't play zone with him. He'll be chasing somebody." But I learned from players too along the way in that Shrine Bowl when I was assistant, that you got to do what your players can do, not what you think you know. You got to do what they can do.
I'm hearing a lot from you about listening, about trusting the people around you, being flexible, being willing to make adjustments, and playing to your own strengths and understanding what they are. Those seem to be philosophies, Coach, that serve you well, not just between the white lines, but also in the game of life.
Well, I think you have to do that. I know I play golf 3 days a week. Every shot is an adventure. A lot of people say, how can you play the same course and not be bored? I said, well, if you just come watch my game, you'll understand, because you don't hit it in the same spot every time. You don't. Your ball flight is not the same every time. The variables are different with the wind and the wet conditions and whatever. I said, so it's a challenge, and life's kind of like that too. I don't think we ever wake up every morning and say, okay, I know what's going to happen today. I've got this figured out. I think you just have to be able to make adjustments on the run.
We have to make adjustments because of the changes that are happening all around us. Football has changed as you have watched the game develop. What do you see as the biggest ways the game has changed in your time?
The players are bigger, faster, and stronger. With everything we've got now, I think the game is improved. But it's so much faster game. Now you see linemen running like running backs used to be able to run. You see big guys that are over 300 pounds that you used to think, well, they have to play offensive tackle because they can't run on defense. Now they're playing defensive end, stuff like that. And you got linebackers that are weighing 250 and 260 and stuff. So the game has changed because of nutrition, strength programs, and it's a more physical game too. The players are certainly delivering hard blows, and I think the game now, more and more people are actually getting to the football, making plays, so there's more contact on each play. Before, maybe an individual, two players may take somebody down. Now sometimes it's 4 or 5 players getting hits on players. So the game itself has certainly changed.
One thing that hasn't changed, and it's been your belief all along, discipline and responsibility, very much part of football, very much part of life. I know there's a great story involving a playbook and 40 hills from your coaching career.
Sometimes you maybe make decisions that probably aren't very smart if you look back at it, but there was a situation where we gave each of our players a scout report on Monday when they came in to practice. The players had to turn that scout report in on Friday to be able to get their game pants. Well, one player had lost his, and so the players knew that if you lose it, it's going to cost you hills, 10 hills a day, and then if you didn't have it by Monday, it's going to be 40 hills. So, well, Monday came, and that player did not have it. The mother called me and said her son did not lose it. It was her mistake. And I said, well, I'll give you the option. I said, I'll let you run the hills, or your son needs to run the hills. Well, she didn't like that smart aleck attitude I had, and I figured the principal would be calling me the next day, but probably I shouldn't have made a statement like that or a stand like that. But the rest of the players understood that, and if they forgot theirs or misplaced theirs, they had to do the same hills as anybody else.
You never know the impact you make at a given moment, because on the flip side of that story, you have a story about Hare and another young man and his appreciation years down the road of the discipline, accountability, and personal responsibility, the standard that you held up there at Chapin.
He was our starting linebacker, probably been a starting linebacker for 3 years as a senior, and I didn't make him have shaved heads or anything, but I wanted it to be neat haircuts. And his hair, after our August team picture, got longer and longer and longer, and never a haircut. So we got about late in the season, about the end of October, I said, Steve, you need to get a haircut. He said, Coach, no, I don't think so. I said, yeah, you do. To get your jersey, you're going to have to get a haircut. And we hand your jerseys out on Thursday. No. He just said, Coach is going to back down on this because I'm a starting linebacker. So I told the guy handing out jerseys, I said, if he comes in to get his jersey, say no and bring it to my office, and hopefully he'll have it cut by the next morning. Well, the team was getting a little bit split on the decision. Like, why is this stupid coach going to take our starting linebacker off the team just because of his hair? So I made a statement. I said, if we win the next 2 games against Batesburg, Leesville, and Mid Carolina, both very good football teams, we'll win the conference championship, and I'll get my head shaved to show you that hair is not so important. Of course, that rallied them. Steve got his hair cut. We won the next 2 weeks somehow, and then coming back from a meeting Monday morning, I started thinking, I've got to get my hair cut, or either they going to hold me down and shave me. Well, my regular barber was not working that day, so I had to find another barber in Chapin. I walked into his shop. He said, I know why you're here. The players have already told me. He said, how short do you want it? I said, short enough that I don't have to come back. So he cut it to a little buzz length, and I wore a hat that day at practice, which I never did. And of course, they made me take my hat off so they could see and rub my head anyway. But it was kind of in a sense, a rallying cry for us. We probably played better than we should have those two games because both Batesburg Leesville and Mid-Carolina were better teams than us at that time. But somehow that rallied the team together, and the kid got his hair cut. And then probably about 8 or 10 years ago in Chapin, I bumped into him. And he was a manager of a restaurant in the Myrtle Beach area. And he said, Coach said, I want to tell you something. I said, oh, Lord. He's holding this grudge for probably 20-something years now. He's going to punch me out here. So I backed up a little bit. He said, I want to thank you because you made me do something I didn't want to do as a 17-year-old. You made me get my hair cut because it was for the best interest of the team because everybody else was having to go by the same standards. And now, as a manager of a restaurant, I realize everybody's got to pull their own weight to be a part of the team to make it work successfully. So thank you. So sometimes you think, oops, you're making the wrong decision. Then a young person will come back and share a story like that with you. You say, well, maybe it was the right decision. Maybe at the time, a lot of people thought I was crazy, but maybe it helped that young man in his life.
So it is true, just to sum all that up, you lost your own hair on a couple of unexpected wins. It's amazing what a little motivation will do.
That's right. The players, I remember for those 2 weeks when we were running conditioning drills, they'd say, hair, 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 hair. They wanted my hair anyway. So, but it was, sometimes you make foolish statements you shouldn't, but then some of those were probably the ones I did anyway.
Sometimes they turn into lifetime memories. And the theme that you've laid out there is so true for all time, that discipline and personal accountability and responsibility and being part of a team, these are the values that you were able to teach student athletes that transcend the sport of football.
We hope that helped a few people. Sometimes you try to mold them in the right direction, and sometimes they realize it at the time. And my wife used to say, sometimes you're too black and white. There needs to be a gray area, and you need to have a little bit of in between. I said, but I guess the players knew it was either right or wrong. It was not, okay, we'll forgive you this time or next time or the next 3 times. You need to do it the way everybody else is expected. And maybe that was the wrong way to do it, but that was our approach.
For you, has there been anything more gratifying than seeing that growth and development, not only as football players, but in the lives of those young men who have been under your leadership?
I had a call about 3 or 4 years ago from a young man who moved to Virginia, and he said, Coach said, I need some help. So you immediately think, uh-oh, he either needs money or needs to get out of jail or something. Something's happened. Or he's broken down on the interstate and wants to ride home or something. And I said, what is it? And he said, my son won't listen to anything I say. And I said, well, Percy, when you played for us, sometimes we had to, I remember I had an English teacher that said you didn't want to listen to anything she said, but we had that hill there beside the school, and I could get your attention from if you messed up in English class by letting you run that hill a little bit because you loved football. I said, that was your love. If I'd have taken that away from you, that would have killed you. I said, what can you do to take away something from your son that he loves that may change his attitude? He said, video games. So about a week later, he calls me back and says, Coach, it worked. I took those video games away, and now he's a different person. I said, well, sometimes you hit the right button. I said, but good luck with it. I said, remember, he's a young person just like you were, and he's going to make some mistakes. I said, but keep working with him.
Well, Coach, those are great stories and great memories, and certainly, as I said, lessons that far transcend what happens in football. You're often addressed, and we've addressed you that way from time to time throughout this interview, as a Hall of Fame head coach. When people say Hall of Famer Eddie Muldrow, what kind of emotions, what kind of feeling does that stir inside of you?
I think it makes you say, well, why me? Because you don't do it by yourself. Anytime you get recognized like that, I think it's the people you've been around, whether it be the athletes, assistant coaches. I know once, Coach Justin Gentry asked me to speak to the Chapin football team. And I said, I want all the offensive linemen to stand up. And so there were probably 10 or 15 kids stand up. I said, y'all can sit down. All the defensive linemen stand up. About 10 or 15 of them stood up. I said, y'all can sit down. I said, when the game's over tonight, there'll be a reporter here at the game, but they're going to be talking to the quarterback or linebacker, and they'll never come and talk to y'all. But y'all are far more important people than the quarterback and the linebacker. I said, so remember your role on this team is far more important. They may get their name in the paper, but y'all are the guys doing all the hard work to make it possible for those guys to get their name in the paper. So as a head coach, I tried to emphasize to my assistant coaches that y'all are doing all the hard work. My name gets in the paper, but y'all are the ones that are doing everything to make it possible. So I think Hall of Fames are kind of like that too. If you're around people that work hard, so a lot of times things just kind of fall in place for you. You got to have people that are willing to know that their role is to be assistant coach. That they're probably more important than the head coach in a lot of situations.
For coaches, for anybody who makes an impact in our world and in our culture, it's not just about what you do. There's so many other people around you. You've talked about that on the playing field, Coach, but it's also true when it comes to your family life.
It's certainly true. I think as a coach, you have to have a coach's wife, somebody to understand. It's got to be a package deal. And fortunately, had a wife that understood that right from the beginning, because we got married. I was a graduate assistant coach under Jim Carlin. A lot of times on Friday nights, I was going to places all throughout the state or North Carolina, Virginia to look at high school kids. And she was there, by herself as a newlywed. But to have a strong coach's wife with you helps so much. And I think at Chapin High School, my wife did a great job. When we had a game on Friday night, she would load up her van with the coaches' wives and the children and go to where we're playing, whether it be Mid Carolina, Dillon, Pageland, Woodruff, whatever. And so we have somewhat of a family atmosphere within our football staff as well. And I think that's so important to be able to survive today as well.
A priceless partnership, and it keeps everything in life in perspective. Let's kind of zero in on looking back at your career for just a moment. What have football and coaching, for that matter, meant to the life of Eddie Muldrow?
Football was not really my favorite sport growing up. Baseball probably was. I played football, and I remember as a sixth grader in midget football, we had to lay on our back about 5 yards apart, and they blew a whistle, and you got up, and the guy with the ball ran, and the other one had to tackle him. And the first time I did that, the guy with the ball lowered his head right in my stomach. And I said, now, why do I want to play this game? And so I probably wasn't tough enough, but I learned that football gave me an opportunity to go to college on scholarship, gave me an opportunity to get my master's degree as a graduate assistant coach. And then it gave me a chance to go out into the teaching world. And I found out from my high school football athletic director that coaching was something I wanted to do, because he gave 4 of us, we were juniors on the basketball team, an opportunity to work with 8th grade boys in what we call midget basketball. We each had like 7 players on the team. We had like 6 games, and we played games once a week. But I found out then that coaching was something I enjoyed. So I probably reaped a lot of benefits from being able to work with young people. It's been a rewarding career to see the development of people, not only on the athletic field, but also in life. So I guess it's just a rewarding career as much as anything else.
How about a message to current student athletes and coaches that are working their way maybe into their careers in the early stages of it, looking at what are they going to do with the next chapter of their lives? Bring all your life experiences together and share a message with those who are coming behind you, not only in the game, but in the state of South Carolina and in terms of life in general.
I think you got to remember that high school sports are important for everybody, but that pretty much is the end for the majority of the kids in high school. Very small percentage go off to get college scholarships. We'd like to think that, oh yes, half of my team is going to go play college football. Half of the baseball team or the basketball team, but very few get that opportunity. So I think as a coach, you need to make sure they enjoy that experience, so they get the most out of it. Whatever you can do to make that the best experience for them, because when their playing days are over, they're going to remember what happened, with you in high school. They won't have that chance to go, very few to college, or even a smaller percentage to the NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, whatever. So you need, as a person, to understand that you're molding their lives, but also to give them the best possible playing experience they can have.
Well, your legacy has been summed up as do what's right, even when that's not always easy. You yourself shared that phrase a little bit earlier in this interview. In addition to that, when folks remember Eddie Muldrow years down the line and decades down the line, what do you hope is the fullness of the legacy that you've left?
A principal asked me that one time. He was a first year principal for us. He said, "What is your legacy going? What you want your legacy to be?" I said, "I just want to be back next year." I said, "I just want to be here at school next year." I said, I guess I hadn't thought so much about the future, but I guess you'd like to say that you tried to be firm but fair with all the kids. You tried to give them opportunities to compete, that you didn't judge them on who their parents were, their skin color, but you tried to give each of them a fair opportunity to be the best they could be. And hopefully you pushed them hard enough that they would say, this person was doing it for the right reason. This person made me run, or this person made me sit out this game, or this person made me apologize to this teacher or to this girlfriend, because they knew life was going to be like that too. That life is not easy, and you can have some ups and downs, but you got to find a way to get back up and get ready to go the next day.
Strong message for us all, not just for this moment, but for all of time. You've been a treasure to the state of South Carolina, to the sport of high school football, college football, all down the line. It's been a pleasure for so many of us to call you friend, and we thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me.